The wind howled through the barren trees, carrying a bone-chilling whisper across the deserted road. The night was ink black, save for the twin beams of an approaching bus slicing through the suffocating darkness. James Holloway had been driving the night shift for nearly a decade, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to experience. As he maneuvered the near-empty bus through the winding road leading out of town, a sudden flash of movement on the shoulder caught his eye. A lone figure stood at the edge of the road, bathed in the pale glow of his headlights. It was a woman, clad in a tattered white dress that fluttered unnaturally in the wind. Her long, dark hair hung in tangled strands over her face. She wasn't hitchhiking, she wasn't even moving. She just stood there, motionless, as if waiting for something, or someone. James hesitated. His route rarely saw passengers at this hour, and there were no houses for miles. Still, something about her compelled him to stop. He pulled the bus to a slow halt, the doors hissing open. "Need a ride, miss?" he called out, his voice swallowed by the eerie silence of the road. The woman didn't respond. Then, with an almost mechanical motion, she stepped forward and boarded the bus. The moment she passed him, a shudder ran down James's spine. The air turned frigid. He cleared his throat. "Where are you headed?" Silence. James glanced at her through the rearview mirror as she took a seat in the very back. The dim overhead lights flickered, casting erratic shadows across her pallid face. Something was wrong. He adjusted his grip on the steering wheel and pulled the bus back onto the road, shaking off the creeping unease gnawing at his gut. He had a job to do. Minutes passed. The bus rumbled down the desolate stretch. Yet the feeling of being watched crawled over James like an unwelcome touch. Every time he stole a glance at the mirror, the woman sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap. But something had changed. Her face. The features that were once obscured by her hair were becoming disturbingly clear. Her eyes, dark, bottomless voids, were locked onto him. Her lips parted slightly, though no breath left them. And then, as the bus rolled over a pothole, her head twitched violently, almost as if disjointed. James swallowed hard. He had seen plenty of strange passengers, but none had ever unsettled him like this. His pulse hammered against his ribs as he tried to focus on the road. The radio crackled suddenly, emitting a garbled burst of static that made him jump. He reached out to adjust the dial, but a whisper slithered through the speakers, barely audible yet bone deep. "Turn back." James froze, his fingers hovering over the knob. The voice was hollow, distant, but unmistakably female. He snapped his gaze to the mirror again. The woman was no longer seated. The seat was empty. His breath hitched. He gripped the wheel tighter, his knuckles white. That was impossible. He had just seen her. A cold breath ghosted over his ear. James jerked his head to the side, but the aisle was empty. The lights flickered wildly, plunging the bus into brief spurts of darkness. The air grew thick, suffocating, as if the vehicle had become a sealed tomb. Then, a whisper, right behind him. "Let me off here." James whipped around, his heart in his throat. She was standing directly behind his seat, her face inches from his. Up close, her skin was ghastly pale, almost translucent, and her eyes, they weren't human. They were endless pits, void of life, void of existence itself. His scream never left his throat as the bus swerved violently. Tires screeched against the pavement, and the vehicle skidded to a stop. The doors burst open on their own, releasing a gust of freezing wind that howled through the cabin. The woman stepped off, her bare feet making no sound against the asphalt. She turned slowly, staring at him with those soulless eyes. And then, she smiled. James barely registered the radio bursting to life one last time. The same distorted voice whispering a final, chilling warning. You shouldn't have stopped. With that, the woman dissolved into the night, her form fading into the mist that curled along the roadside. James sat frozen in his seat, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He didn't know how long he stayed there, gripping the wheel as though it was the only thing tethering him to reality. The road was empty once more. The last passenger was gone. But as James finally gathered the courage to shift the bus into drive, his rearview mirror reflected something that turned his blood to ice, a single handprint. Smeared in red, on the back window.